Hey there, Celebration Pros. Welcome back to the podcast. I'm so excited today. We have Renee Dalo and Renee. Of course, we had a little intro ahead of this about you, but I love to hear from you personally, how you've gotten to this place in your journey. Tell our audience a little bit about who you are and what you do.
Sure. Well, at this point in my career, like feels like a loaded question because I'm like, how long do we have to talk about all this?
I know.
I will give you the tiniest bullet points. I am a wedding planner and designer. I used to say I'm primarily that, but that isn't true anymore. I started as a wedding planner in end of 2012, 2013. And I live in Los Angeles. It's where I'm based. So we work all over Southern California. My company is called Moxie Bright Events. In 2018, I got the opportunity to speak at Wedding MBA. I'm sort of skipping over a lot of major points, but let's just get to the bullet points. And 2018 is when I officially launched my education brand for wedding pros. And then I have been primarily, I guess because of the pandemic, because in LA, we were closed down, we were just fully shut down for like almost 2 solid years. So on one hand, it was very devastating for the wedding planning business to have to we postponed 14 weddings, we canceled 4. But on the other hand, I had this baby education brand that I was like, well, I have a course and I have some little tidbits here and there. Like I could just kind of dive in there. And that's what I did during the pandemic. So during the pandemic, we launched 3 additional courses. I produced the Profitable Pro Bundle 3 times. I started a mastermind group and a group coaching program, which then led to my pursuit of a life coaching certification. So I'm a wedding planner, I'm an educator, a public speaker, a life coach, and a podcast host. It sounds bananas when I say it to you, but like in the actuality of my day-to-day, it doesn't feel that overwhelming.
It doesn't sound bananas because like as a fellow, well, I'm a retired wedding planner, but like I get it. And a lot of the time, like when you say life coach, I'm like, yeah, you're a wedding planner. Like
yeah.
You're certified as a life coach.
So what's interesting is that I think on some level, like every wedding pro is a bit of a life coach. But then when I went to start this 2.5-year process of getting certified, I was like, oh, okay. Yes. Giving advice is very different than being a life coach. And now I know that now, but I think, at a certain level, we're all sort of, doing a certain level of therapy and coaching to our clients as part of the job, which is what makes our jobs as wedding pros so bananas, really. And it just, this isn't the kind of career I think that you can like leave it behind. Like you can't you don't like close the door to your office and like go home and you're like, oh, I'm going to brush that off. Like it doesn't work that way. We're intimately involved with people's lives. Mm-hmm. And that's really what led me to the whole life coaching part of my career that's happening now.
Yeah, no, I love that. It makes a lot of sense. The journey that you've had, like the steps make sense. And for our listeners, the majority of our listeners are in the wedding industry and they can probably see that too, even if they are in their, if they are still just only in their niche, but we're finding in like the new times that when you start to grow, you end up with these new streams of income and these new passions that stem from all of your experience. So kudos to you for following that path.
Thanks.
Yeah, absolutely. So today we're going to talk a little bit about perfectionism, which is always a fun topic. I think it's something that a lot of us, I sway back between, and I talk about this a little bit, but perfectionism and procrastination, like sometimes it's like somehow they both creep up in there.
Yeah, no, they go hand in hand, kind of. For some people.
Yeah. So I would say my first question around this topic that you can educate us on is, when do you think that this really starts to creep in for the entrepreneur? Is it like right away? What are some of those like red flags where we can maybe put ourselves in check or help our peers around us too?
Yeah. Well, I think, especially if you're a wedding pro listening, we've baked it into the culture of our industry, which is absolutely the worst thing we could have done for ourselves. Because everyone says like, well, your wedding day is the best day of your life, or it has to be perfect. It's the perfect day. There are wedding planners who have companies that are called Your Perfect Day.
Mm-hmm.
What? Like, why do we set ourselves up to try to attain this completely impossible scenario, right? Mm-hmm. Even if something is quote unquote perfect, we all know on the back end that it wasn't, right? Like we all know that we we called the rental company because the chairs were late, or the cake almost fell over, or that one drunk uncle got cut off right before it became a problem. Like, we know that this perfect thing that we're trying to give them, it doesn't exist. And so we all have agreed to, like, we're silently complicit in this thing about our industry needing to be perfect. It's the perfect dress, it's the perfect day, it's the perfect bride, it's the perfect whatever, right? Perfect first dance, perfect everything. It's a huge, I think it's a huge problem. I wish we would all stop promising perfection. I was on a panel last year with someone who I deeply admire. His name is Bron Hansbrough. He's a florist. I love Bron. Fun fact, Bron and I auditioned for Wedding MBA the same time, same day. So we were in like the little waiting room together, like, ooh, what will happen?
Oh, how fun. What a great way to connect.
Right. And so like I met his husband, he met my husband, like everyone was like, all the husbands were like, I hope they do okay. Like, it was just like a lovely moment. But so I've known him forever. And we're on a panel and we came to it because he was like, I promise my clients perfection. We have to do perfection. There's nothing less. And I was like, how do you ever relax? Like, how do you sleep at night? Like, how do you exist? He's like, I just live up to it. And I'm like, that isn't a normal state to be in, right? Like, this constant perfection, like, it will just wear down on us, and ultimately it will just lead to burnout. So to answer your actual question, how do we see it coming? First of all, stop promising it. Like, in my consults with potential wedding planning clients, I just say, look, there's no such thing as a perfect wedding. We're going to be super close to it, but all the imperfections are what is going to make the day special. The little things that you didn't expect, like the like the flower girl who starts like babbling or yelling, like, I want to leave. Like, that's really funny 20 years from now, right?
Yeah. It like makes it better.
It makes it better. Like, all that little thing, it gives it texture. Like, perfect is actually kind of boring, right? And if we're selling perfect, we're never going to have happy clients. If we're trying to be perfect for ourselves, well, that's just a moving target. Like, are we ever going to be satisfied? So I think if you feel or hear the inner voice in your head, if you're constantly berating yourself, if you're constantly looking at the pros that you hang out with or that you admire, going like, oh, I'll never be like them. Oh, look how perfect that is. Like, we all know, like, the Instagram highlight reel, that's not real, right? The first, I'd say, like, look at the voices in your head, right? Take a little second to like honor your own journey, how far you've come. Because even if you've been in business a year, your first wedding is like nowhere near as good as the wedding you just did last week. Like, there is a journey in this industry, and you can't get better without doing it, right? Like, we're one of the only industries, like, you can't learn about this stuff in a book. I mean, you can try, but right, how did you always learn more like on site than you ever did just from like, oh, this so-and-so told me this would happen?
I have the book Event Management for Dummies. I have. I'll tell you, I've never read it. I bought it because I thought it was funny to have on the bookshelf. So when clients come in, I can be like, like, just as a joke.
Yeah.
Never read it. It's
I have
hands-on.
I have Wedding Planning for Dummies, which, fun fact, it was written by Marcy Blum.
Oh, that one might be worth reading.
I have it. I mean, I adore her. So like, sign me up for whatever she's got going on. But I remember someone bought it for me as a joke when I started my business. And then like a year later, I was looking at it and I was like, oh my God, Marcy wrote this. So,
that's amazing.
I vouch for that one. But yeah, I think, perfectionism is a slippery slope. We're never going to be perfect. And it's just a recipe for disaster, really. And like, I like your question about like, how do we see it in others? I think as just fellow humans in this journey of life together, I think it's okay to look at your friends if they say something like say a florist, you have say you're a wedding planner and your florist friend comes to do the flowers for this wedding, and they just don't think it's perfect. And they're like, oh my God, this one flower, it's dead. Oh my God, what am I going to do? And they're spiraling. Like, it is kind and it is generous and it is, I think, right to say, hey, stop, look around. This place is gorgeous. Like, you did this, like, acknowledge what's good. Because if we're only ever looking for what's not perfect, like, how sad does that sound?
How often in your career have you been like, and maybe this is probably much earlier on, maybe when we didn't have this like confidence to stand on as seasoned professionals.
Yeah.
But I don't know about you, but for me in the beginning, I was almost afraid to ask. I was afraid to ask for reviews because I was like, I knew what went wrong. Yeah. And I was like, what if that's all they're hanging on to? And I ask for a review and then I don't get the 5 stars. And da da da
Right.
da. And I forget about like what a magical, beautiful day, the thank yous I got at the end, the card that I got, or the wonderful meetings we had, and all of the process.
Yeah.
And we just hang on to like, oh my gosh, I couldn't even, like, I put her
Like, oh, someone
on my
lost an
chair,
ear.
like,
Right. Or like, I mean, I had this a couple of weeks ago. We did a gorgeous wedding early May. And literally it was as close to perfect as it could have gotten. Now, granted, behind the scenes, yeah, the chairs were late. They scratched the floor. The dance floor guys were a mess. Like, there were so many vendors coming in. And that's the thing I think when I was a baby wedding planner, I didn't quite understand really, is that like, everyone wants these luxury weddings, but like this luxury wedding had almost 40 vendors, 40. So could I have managed 40 vendors my first year? Probably not. But anyway, at this wedding, which went very, very, very well, the bride didn't tell me that she was wearing her grandmother's bracelet, like an heirloom bracelet. And then she lost it and then didn't tell me until the next morning.
Mhm.
So I saw her the next morning at the brunch and she's like, Renee, I lost my grandmother's bracelet. And I was like, wait, what? And she's like, can you find it? I'm like, can I find it the next what? So I went back to the venue. The bracelet is not at the venue. I agree with you, Karen. And like in year one, I would have been like, I can't ask for a review because of the bracelet.
Right.
The bracelet was not part of the wedding. Right.
Right.
And also like there's so little we can control in that scenario. And in many of the scenarios that we have in our head, right? Like, oh, everything was perfect except for the DJ said something he shouldn't have said, or everything was perfect except that one sound cue, or salad was 5 minutes late. They don't necessarily know that. And I think too, as a general statement about reviews, I always ask them how they felt. How do they feel? How did they feel the day of the wedding? How did they feel during the planning? How did they feel the next day? A lot of them don't even know. And I do, and I've done it for the last couple of years, but I agree this has more to do with confidence and like skill level than I couldn't have done this in year one. Now at 30 days, I send an email and I say, hey, it's been a month. I miss you guys. Let's get on a Zoom and have like a recap call. And that's when I'm like, you can ask me anything. And then they're like, then it ends up being like fun gossip and who made out with who and which bridesmaid was so drunk. And then I say, is there anything about any of the vendors you want to let me know? Because I'm not there with them for every moment of the day. I don't know if the photographer did whatever or the videographer. So I say, is there anything you want to tell me? Sometimes they do. Sometimes they're like, we really didn't like the DJ play that song. Like sometimes things stick.
Mm-hmm.
At that point, it's 30 days later, right? So they have talked to their family and friends. They have seen the candid photos. They've seen the sneak peeks. So their memory of the day is what's going to stick, right? It isn't really the reality of the day. Right. I like those postmortem calls. I like hearing, I like addressing things. Like a couple of months ago, we had a wedding over it was last year. We had a 4th of July wedding. And, during the process, it was 2 brides. And they expressed some frustration with me because they were like, you're never home and we need to talk to you. And I was like, you can always schedule a call. Like me not being in LA has nothing to do with our working together, but they expressed frustration. I addressed it. We moved on. A year later, they got married. We did the postmortem and I said something like, what was it like working with me? And they're like, we love you. Everything was perfect. And I was like, no. Everything was not perfect because do you remember? And they said, yeah, well, that was just us then. But now we understand that like you have multiple people you're working with. Like now we didn't have perspective back then. And I was like, oh, how interesting, right? Because 10 years ago, I wouldn't have asked that question.
I have goosebumps because I wish every bride would just listen to that. Like every couple would listen to that little segment. That's so like true.
We have perspective now. And I said, you know what, and then Emily said to me, you should tell your clients ahead of time that you travel, but it's not a big deal. And I was like, I did tell you that, but they didn't, they didn't
process.
Yeah, they can't process everything. So anyway, this very long anecdote is to tell you that don't be afraid of asking for real feedback. I think part of an entrepreneur is just having a thicker skin than most. And so listen, if a client clearly didn't like me or the process, I'm probably not going to get on a postmortem call with them because I already know what they're going to say. Right. And you can't really fix we didn't like your personality. Like, okay, then why did you hire me? Right. Like I can't fix that. We cannot go back in time. But if there are little things here and there, especially if you have a team and part of your team is working with them without you, you need a postmortem. Yes. I hate calling it that, but that's what it is, right? To be like, hey, what did you think about Kelsey? What was your feedback? And they'll tell you because you're the safe space, hopefully,
Yeah, I do follow-up calls with my coaching. I mean, I love this for weddings, of course, as well. I do them with my coaching clients.
Yeah.
I feel like a lot of times in the coaching space, we like give all this information and like
Yeah.
maybe some additional support, but there's never like, let's follow up and see where like, can I help you going to the next place, or did you get what you needed and all of that? And you really do get like, you as the business owner get a new perspective a lot of times.
Yeah. We
And
all
that's
have
how you
blind
learn and
spots.
grow.
Absolutely. Like we all have blind spots. Even the most self-aware person doesn't always know how they come across to someone. And again, if you're only wanting to be perfect, you're never going to grow, because you're going to be like, well, I'm perfect, I'm doing everything perfectly. Well, perfectly for you, maybe. But we also have to acknowledge now that a lot of our clients are neurodiverse. And if you're not, and you're communicating with them in the same way you always have, and they're like, this doesn't work for me, it might not be like a failure of your workflow. It might just be different people's brains trying to work together. And like, that's something we didn't talk about 10 years ago when I started, more than that, like everyone's constantly evolving. And like, unfortunately, as business owners, like we have to constantly evolve as well.
It's true. And there's so much like new tech. I mean,
yeah,
we're the audience. We had a hard time getting on Zoom today. There's so many new things that are coming out, and what's happening right now, there's gonna be a whole new like slew of things that we can be using as tools next year.
Yeah.
And learning about what works best and what's the most user friendly and the easiest way to communicate. And sometimes the easiest way to communicate with one person, it's going to be different. It just is.
It absolutely
like
is.
You're saying, because our brains all work a little differently.
Right. And I, honestly, like post-pandemic, like science, there have been studies that like our brains are actually different now. Like we are different on like a cellular level, we're different. And let's also just briefly mention like the perfectionism of like social media and TikTok. First of all, 5 years ago, what was TikTok? It would have been a nonsense word that nobody knew what the hell we were talking about. But if you're someone who does, even if you don't create on TikTok, if you just browse, I'm a huge lurker on TikTok. The people that I generally are drawn to are the imperfect people, right? There's a creator on TikTok, Elise Myers. Do you know her? She's phenomenal. She now has a podcast. She's like an actual media, like she's like a celebrity now, right? She comes on camera. I talked about her in Vegas last year at Wedding MBA. She comes on camera, no makeup, no hair. She's, she is pregnant again. She, because the first time she was popular, she was also pregnant. So like we've been with her now for like 2 pregnancies. She's neurodiverse. She talks about it. She is also a musician. She's kind of a comic. Like she does these funny little skits. But any wedding planner or person who would see Elise would be like, I would never go on camera like that, because she's so unfiltered, unguarded. She's just who she is, right? Yeah. She has a massive following. People are extremely attached to her. They feel something about her. They feel connected to her, right? People don't want to always see the shiny good stuff. Now, granted, do I think we should all go on social media and like, air our dirty laundry, as my mother would say? No, but there's a difference between coming in filtered, perfect all the time, and just like being who you normally are. The messy middle, right? The messy middle is actually good to show, because it helps our clients understand the process.
It does. And I think it's a big part of how you differentiate yourself. You don't want to be, if everybody's cookie cutter florist or cookie cutter photographer. I mean, photographer is a great place to implement this, because how many different photography styles are there? I mean, I'm pretty sure it's infinite, but and I remember having people call me and they would say, hey, do you have a vendor list for photographers? And I was like, what's your style? What's your budget? Let's look at like 5 different ones, because there's so much talent. You are all listening. You are all so talented in your own way that you don't have to be the copycat of what you think is perfect or what society is telling you is perfect.
No. And also like personality wise, right? Like, especially for photographers and especially for wedding planners, like you have to figure out how to be your authentic self with your clients and just allow it to be, because then you'll get the right people who are authentically just attracted to you, right? Like I cuss. I'm from Brooklyn, New York. I've lived in LA for 25 years. I cannot help myself. I'm going to say some shit, right? We just did. I do it on consult calls. I don't do it a lot. Like I'm not like throwing F-bombs around all the time, right? But I say something that like makes sense, right? I'll be like, well, I don't know, fuck that, or whatever, to see what they do. Because I'm doing Zooms, right? If they're like, then they're not for me. For
Mhm.
those who couldn't see my face, if they give like a what does she say? Then if they don't mind, then I know we're good, right? Now, am I gonna like cuss in front of everyone's grandmother? Of course not. But I want to know that like who I am authentically matches their personality as well. Because if I have to spend 15 months being like, oh gosh, golly, like no,
Tiptoeing. Yeah.
I have no interest in that, and they shouldn't either. And for photographers, because you arguably spend more time with them on the wedding day than even we do,
Oh,
like
yeah.
please be yourself. Just be yourself, because how you get the image is almost as important as the actual image.
Right. Yes.
Like how you prompt, how you pose, what you say to get them to laugh, like that's all really important. That makes or breaks their experience.
I 100% agree. It's when you're trying to be someone you're not, it's exhausting and leads to burnout because you're not doing it for the right reasons, right?
Yeah.
So being authentic and true to yourself it's a huge part of business that a lot of people don't realize how it can very much be lucrative. So,
And then perfectionism too, like if you're always, I mean, it sounds so simple and I feel like I'm repeating myself, but I want to get this point home. Like
yes.
if all you're ever trying to be in your business is perfect, you are going to burn out. You are going to, you're not even going to be able to ever celebrate your success. You're not ever going to be able to look around and say, oh my God, look what I did. This is amazing, right? There's a difference between striving for perfection and up leveling, right? Up leveling, yes, do it all day. Look at what you've done and go, okay, I can do a little bit better next time, right? But this idea that it's all or nothing, that it's so black or white, that it's so binary, right? It's either perfect or it's shit. It's not true. It's not true. And in any other industry, except maybe medical, I think medical, it really is, right? But in any, listen, I say this all the time, and I don't mean this to sound as, I'm sure this is un-PC, but like, we're not curing cancer, we're throwing parties.
Right. Yes.
Right. So like, you're allowed to do your very best work, the very best work you can do today. But if it falls short of perfect, that is not a moral failure of you, the person.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Louder for the people in the back.
You
No, I
are
love this.
still valuable, even if your weddings are imperfect. I know it's a crazy thought.
Yeah, it's so true. So I'm curious what Braun would think if we went back to that moment when he was like,
oh, we had it out on stage.
You know what I mean?
I mean, he
But,
just said like we both just said like agree to disagree. Like,
yeah.
Because what I said to him later, and what I want to say here is that like, when I talk about this, I think the people who are most resistant to this are actually the people who need the message the most. So if you're listening and you're like, I'm super triggered, I don't like this lady, who does she think she is? Like, listen to this episode again. Because I think that sometimes when I say like, well, we shouldn't be striving for perfection, people interpret that as like, well, she must do bad work. No, absolutely not. Like, I think the most common phrase I use with my team is, no, that absolutely is unacceptable. Like, I have such high standards for myself and they're like 1% below perfection, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I think that is what keeps me sane and level and balanced and not just completely crushed every Sunday morning where I'm like, oh, it wasn't perfect. Like, it's never.
But you know that you can be just a little bit better the next time.
Absolutely.
And a little bit better the next time. And a little bit better the next time.
Always.
You're
And
never
listen,
going to be perfect. And that's
no, and honestly, as long as I do this wedding planning career, I'm also never going to be like, quote unquote, done, right? I'm never going to be like, this is the pinnacle of design. This was the wedding. No, there's always going to be like, oh,
mic drop, I'm done.
Yeah, couldn't get better than that, kids. I'm out. Like, no, I imagine that even on my very last wedding, whenever that might be, I'll still say, maybe next time we could do more floating flowers or, better lighting or more lighting. There's always like, if you're a creative person and an entrepreneur, there's always going to be a next level. I'm the most ambitious person that has ever been created, I believe. So I'm not saying don't aspire. I'm just saying don't beat yourself up, right?
Yeah.
And then the other flip of side of this, and I don't know if we talked about this or it was just in our notes about, a lot of times procrastination disguises itself as perfectionism or vice versa, right? So if you find yourself procrastinating constantly, that is an issue to be addressed, right? Because I think at some point, especially during the pandemic. I think we all procrastinated because it was like, I'd rather go bake bread than deal with like my 14 weddings that, you know, aren't giving me any income right now. Let's just go bake bread. But it's not 2020 anymore.
Mm-hmm.
So if you find yourself making list after list of to-do lists, and every day you're going like, oh, I didn't do anything on that list, you have to ask yourself, what's holding you back from doing the things, right? And maybe this is a little journaling opportunity. Anyone who knows me in any space knows that I'm constantly yelling about journaling because it is literally the cheapest, easiest thing you can do for your mental health that like 90% of wedding pros aren't doing. Like, just pick up a journal, guys. I know you have them. I know you have the free notebooks that we've given you at every conference, just stacked up in a corner of your office, not being used. Pick up a random notebook and just jot down some thoughts. If your procrastination is because you're like, well, I don't have an unlimited amount of time to do that design board today, so I may as well not start it at all. That, my friend, is actually perfectionism. Because it is always better to do something a little bit at a time than to not do it at all until the sun is at the perfect angle to your home and you're the perfect temperature and you feel fine. Like, the difference, successful people do things they don't feel like doing every single day.
Mm-hmm.
That's it.
I feel like procrastination is fear of the result. Like if if you're procrastinating on something, you got to ask yourself, like, why am I so afraid to, like, what's holding me back from getting this thing accomplished?
Yeah. I mean, and listen, it could be many things, right? You could be like, well, I don't feel like doing that because I'm not interested in that. Okay, well, I'm going to say get moving, because the only way you'll get interested in it is engagement. Like, we spend a lot of time thinking, right, about the things we're supposed to be doing. If we just spent more time doing the things, like, we get more clarity when we're actively involved in something than when we're just like pontificating about like, well, maybe I'll start that design board tomorrow. Just start the design board, guys. Putting things on Canva will get your brain fired all up and you'll be like, oh, okay, I'm doing it. I agree, though. Sometimes it is fear of the result. It's fear of maybe not having a perfect result. It's fear of like, well, I'm not right. I'm not in the right mindset. Like, I don't know. I think we're so gentle with ourselves sometimes, when maybe the alternative of just being a little tough love with ourselves can kind of get us moving in a direction. I think we just always have to be, you know, having our mindset toward action. Like, how can I get myself into the smallest little baby action?
Absolutely.
And then, more action begets more action.
And for those that are like listening and you hear me like giggle here and there, it's because it's so relatable. Like, there's so many times where like you could just probably just talking about this, you can think of something that you've been procrastinating on. Yeah. And so this is your, you know, aha moment, hopefully, or here's your permission slip to go do the thing. Like, just go do it, whatever it is.
And a lot of times we make things so much larger in our head. Like, oh, I got to answer that email that I don't want to answer. And you're like, it's going to take me 30 minutes. You guys, it's going to take you 7 minutes, maybe. Like, I think a lot of us, we really overestimate how long something's going to take sometimes. And then sometimes we way underestimate, but we don't have a strong grip on our own time management. And I have this membership for wedding pros where we have like this new topic every month. And our first month was time management. And every single member was like, oh my, because I made everyone track their time. I was like, just go track your time for like 3 days. And it was like, the third day, they were like, I spent 90 minutes on TikTok. I'm like, like, and it only took me 35 minutes to answer my emails. I'm like, So like, these things that were like, it takes me all day to answer my emails. Like, I don't know, does it really though? Probably not. We really think these things that we're putting off are going to like take all day. No, actually, no. But we just don't have any, you know, real perspective on that for ourselves.
I know, I used to say, you know, oh my gosh, we're working like 60-hour work weeks, and I would be so curious to go be a fly on the wall of myself during that time and be like, how much of that time were you like not actually putting effort in? And like, what if we were more efficient with like when we were the most productive? Like, that's like probably a whole nother topic we could bring you on for, but
yeah. I love that topic. I will say this, because I think this is the stat that like blows everyone's mind. According to like new science, like post-pandemic science, we actually only have room in our brain for 4 hours of deep work per day. Deep work, not like, you know, scheduling phone calls or like bullshit admin work, like actual deep work. So if you're like writing a blog post, designing a wedding, doing a podcast, you know what I mean? Anything that requires your brain to fire on all the cylinders, right? You only have 4 hours a day. So how are you using those 4 hours? Are you splitting them up into 1 hour chunks? Maybe you have kids, maybe you have other responsibilities. Are you just getting up and hammering out those 4 hours? Because listen, once you know you only have 4 hours, when I heard that, I was like, well, that changes everything. Because if I have to do thought leadership work or write a presentation, I already know that I can't do that plus a design board, plus to record several podcasts. Like you can't do all that in one day. Your brain will like melt down.
Yeah.
Which is why we get into burnout.
Yeah.
Which goes back to perfectionism.
Yeah.
See it all.
It all, it's just, yeah.
It's all connected, y'all.
The circle of life. Well, Renee, before we get into some fun Q&A, which will also include kind of what's coming up next for you, is there anything else that you wanted to share on this topic?
Yeah, I think as an industry, I'd love to see us move away from your perfect anything. So if that's in your marketing right now, if it's in your sales language for consult calls, please take it out. And you're going to say, like, what do I replace it with? Perfectly imperfect. That's what I say. It's going to be perfectly imperfect, tiny imperfections. Just, we have to get away from promising that you're going to be infallible, right? Because life happens, especially now, right? Life happens. And even on the wedding day, you know, even the people in their lives aren't going to be perfect people. That's a hard one to sell them on. But no, I mean, just in that language, just removing that expectation a tiny bit will go a long way.
And I would even argue that when you start throwing the word perfection, perfect, anything in synonym to that, what is that telling your client as far as expectation goes? Not only expectations, but I feel like that also puts the pressure on the client to make sure that their day is perfect. Like you're just kind of like feeding this. Well, it's like a toxic thought.
It's totally toxic because it's just like, well, if I'm going to be perfect, then you have to be perfect. And then especially if you have a bride-groom situation, then it's like, what are we telling that woman? You have to be perfect. You have to look perfect. You have to go on a diet, get your teeth whitened, get your hair cut, get it lightened, get your eyebrows, I mean, some of these brides are out there getting plastic surgery. Like, what are we telling people? Just, you're enough as you are. You're enough as you are. The end.
Beautiful. What a way to end that. What a way. Okay, so let's get into some fun Q&A. Well, first of all, this is a good one, especially for you, since you are, life coach, educator, all the things. What is it that you are currently reading and or listening to?
Oh, okay. So I'm currently reading, do I have it here? Oh yeah, I have it here. I'm currently reading this book. It's called Big Friendship, How We Keep Each Other Close. It's by Anamato So and Anne Friedman. They used to have a podcast called, oh shoot, I'm blanking on the name of their podcast. They used to have a podcast together. Call Your Girlfriend. That was called Call Your Girlfriend. And the reason I'm reading this book is because in my membership this month, we're doing relationships. And so this is our book of the month. And then I also just picked up last night at an event, this book called Permission to Speak by Samara Bay, which is all about like linguistic language. And that's like one of my loves. Like if I didn't do this, I'd be a linguist. And it's a lot about like, especially for women, it's a lot about, how to create spaces where we feel safe to speak up and kind of just like a fresh take on all those things that we always hear, like don't say don't say like, don't say I'm sorry. And I still firmly believe all those, but Samara has some pretty interesting like new perspective on that. So I'm reading those two things. What am I listening to? I'm listening to Taylor Swift just 24/7. I'm sorry.
Yes.
I'm a Swiftie. I didn't get tickets, which is a whole other thing. I'm so annoyed about it. I was waiting for that Capital One presale and it just didn't come through, as we know. So I am obsessively watching Taylor Swift on TikTok every weekend. And my husband just laughs at me and I'm like, listen, don't yuck my yum. I like what I like. I like Taylor Swift. Yeah, that's what I'm doing these days.
Yeah, it was here in Florida that her concert was almost rained out. And she came out and just got soaked. And I'm like,
she did 4 hours in the rain. You guys, if you don't like Taylor Swift, I don't know what to tell you. You're not paying attention. No one is doing what she's doing right now. No one's doing it.
She was like, we're going off topic and that's fine. But she was like, it was 14 million people when her concert came on. It was 14 million people tried to get tickets and there was only space for like 2, if that, something. And so she had to expand the tour.
Yeah. And even
it's
then,
like, yeah, still it didn't
even
come.
then you didn't get
How do you
tickets.
go from 2 to 14? It like, like holy moly. And
Mhm.
and she's, if you want to take perfectionism, we'll wrap it in. If you want to take perfectionism advice, watch her. She's like the most authentic human being you'll ever like witness in that realm.
She keeps getting one of her costumes. She has like 16 costume changes, and one of them has these complicated sleeves. And most nights she does it wrong. And then while she's singing, she's like, "My sleeve is wrong." She'll just say it. She's like, "Oh,
Yeah.
I didn't." And it's endearing. It's lovely. People are obsessed. They're like, "Oh, did she do her dress wrong?" Like, we're waiting for her to be human,
Yeah.
not
She's like
perfect.
playing the piano, like wiping water
Yeah,
off the piano. I'm like, oh, you're amazing.
she's
Okay.
amazing.
I'm so glad you brought her up. That was great. And I'll drop these books into the show notes as well. So the next fun question is, if we are, and hopefully we are, I think we'll probably be in the same rooms, within the next year. If we are meeting up in 1 year from now and we're popping a bottle of champagne in your honor, what would we be celebrating?
I literally am pausing because I'm like, how honest do I want to be here? First of all, I love champagne, and I rarely drink, but I will always drink. If you offer me champagne, I will drink it. A year from now. So this is kind of a tangential thing, but my husband is a TV producer, and his TV show premiered last week from when we're recording this. It's called The Prank Panel, and I'm in it. I'm in the first episode because they did like a wedding prank, and I'm the wedding planner in it.
Amazing.
I'm really hoping that by next year I can say we had a season 2 and I got to be in it more, because that was a lot of the discussion that we had at the premiere party, where the producers were like, "We want to get you back in," and I was like, "Yeah, keep doing wedding pranks, yo. Like, I'll do whatever you want," because it's just really fun. I used to be an actor, and so it's nice to kind of blend those two worlds. And I think, like, at least for my family, like a season 2 would be really a good thing. So hopefully
Yes,
that we're celebrating.
I love it. I will. What's the name of the show?
It's called The Prank Panel, and it's on Hulu. It's on ABC and Hulu. And it Johnny Knoxville is in it, and Gabby Sidibe and Eric Andre. And it's just basically like a combination of Shark Tank and Punked, kind of like it's really people playing pranks on their family. And in my episode, which is the first episode, it's a real life husband and wife officiant team that I know here in LA. And he played a prank on her. And so I was there because she knows me. And so if I were there, there'd be like,
right.
You want to make it seem as real as possible. So she just thought it was a random wedding that I was doing on a Wednesday, which I probably wouldn't do. But I kind of made it feel more legitimate to her. Her reaction was spectacular. Go watch it on Hulu. It's really funny.
Yes. Oh, that's probably the most fun answer I've heard so far. And can I say, like, in the intro, it starts off like multi-passionate entrepreneur that infuses energy. And when I read that, I was like, this is gonna be fantastic. Let's infuse the energy.
Let's do it.
Renee, where can our listeners find you? And this will actually be airing this month in June.
Oh, great.
So what do you have coming up?
So, well, go watch The Prank Panel. I'm repping the family business. So I have a podcast called Talk with Renee Dalo. It comes out every Thursday. It's interviews with it's with wedding pros, but not really with wedding pros. It's for wedding pros, but I like to bring in outsiders, because I feel like, even though I am one of the 30 wedding industry speakers that are like, hi, me again, I think it's important that we are not so insular as an industry. And that podcast, we've been doing that for almost 3 years now, so we have a bunch of episodes in the back that you can listen to. For all education stuff, you can find me at Renee Dalo. That's my website, and also on Instagram. Next week, I'm speaking at the Event Industry Expo in Vegas, but I think this episode will come out after that. That's like a brand new conference, but I will be at Wedding MBA this year in November. And I'm on the main stage, like the big old stage this year. So
that's amazing.
No, what? I'm like, what is happening? I'm Tuesday at 11, and nobody else is Tuesday at 11. So basically Tuesday at 11, if you want some education, you just have me. It's your only option. It's just me.
Welcomed. It's so welcomed.
Come on over, everybody. I think the room fits like 5,000 people or something insane. So please don't make it be empty. Please come see me.
Yes. It'll be your Tay-Tay moment.
It'll be my Tay-Tay moment. I hope
wall
it doesn't.
To wall, we'll fill it.
Oh, and then the final thing is that I know I briefly alluded to it. in this convo, but I do have a membership for wedding pros. That's a self-care membership for wedding pros.
Okay.
I started it this year because I really started realizing through my coaching and through my life coach training that like so many wedding pros are excellent at their jobs and really suck at taking care of themselves, which is why we burn out, which is why I gained like full 25 pounds when I started my business. I was like, I'm gonna eat macaroni and cheese when I'm stressed out. We have so many coping mechanisms for our clients and very little for ourselves. So the membership is ongoing. You can find it at reneedalo.com/better. It's called Better with Renee Dalo. I like naming things after myself because I'm lazy. And it's a very interesting membership in that it's different than what we've seen out there. We have life coaches that come in every month and do like a meetup where they just educate. Then we have a guided meditation that's released every month. We have a private podcast. We have a book club. And we also have like a literal like come to Zoom and get coached by the guest coach every month. So if you have something specific, very niche that you want to talk about in this, closed environment, it's just a really good way to like keep yourself on the path of just taking excellent care of yourself. Oh, and we also do daily journaling prompts that are delivered via text. So it kind of, even if you can't journal that day, you get the message and you're like, oh, like this morning. Yeah, it's a thought. Like this morning's question, because we're in relationship month, was like, which relationships in your life make you feel seen? And like, sometimes I know when I'm writing these prompts that like, I'm going to get some emails. And like, I went into the community this morning, everyone's like, damn you, in this prompt this morning made me cry. And I was like, that's what we're doing here. We're just
gotcha.
Well, it's just like we spend so much time thinking about other people, and I just want us to turn the lens on ourselves a little bit.
Yeah, we did an episode recently where I had a health coach come on, and we talked about the transition from like being at our desks and then going into high action energy events. Like we're at our desk for 40 hours during the week, and then let's just decide to run a marathon.
Yes.
Because why?
Yes. It's bananas. When LA finally started opening up, me and some other friends of mine who are wedding planners, we put ourselves on like a training program because we were like, we've been sedentary for like almost 2 years. So we had a walking circle that we would do. We would get on Peloton together. We were like stretching every morning because like, I was like, oh, my body is not used to 15 hours on standing up. It still isn't, to be honest. Plus I'm 47 now. So like, it's a lot. But yeah, we have to like condition ourselves for it.
You have to train. Absolutely.
You have to train. Yeah.
Renee, this has been amazing. This was a really fun conversation. I think the Celebration Pros will definitely resonate with all this. And I have a feeling that this could have gone in like 10 different other directions. Yeah. I think we were like swerving in our lane, but we did okay.
We got Taylor Swift in there, and that's all I really care about. So
it's true. That's the number one thing. So I look forward to just kind of crossing paths with you in the future.
Same.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much.
Thank you.